right time to get in touch with Bob and get all your questions clarified and see how you could be a part of this amazing journey and bootcamp. So go ahead, Bob. The stage is all yours. And it's totally up to Bob. He wants to take questions in the between or at the end or anything. It's totally Bob's choice. So on to you, Bob.
Sure. Well, I think it's informal. It's a small-ish group, so it's nice because we can have more conversations. So just feel free to unmute or raise if you don't feel comfortable just jumping in, or if I'm talking so much that you can't get a word in, then just raise your hand and we'll be good. And I'll be happy to chat and take your questions. So yeah, thanks Kamal and thanks Abhijit for the very kind introduction. So I guess you probably already know some of this. Maybe I don't know. Was this group in your previous training on Kamal on the Teams Toolkit, or is this a different group?
Yeah, that's a good question. Any idea if these participants were a part of track 1 as well? You can raise your hands if you're part of track 1 as well.
Group.
No.
I guess it's safe to say that I shouldn't assume that and should kind of start from the beginning.
Yeah, you can go ahead, Bob.
So,
no problem.
So we're in Microsoft Teams now, obviously. And what a lot of people don't realize is that Teams is more than just a collaboration tool. It's also an application platform. And there's a lot of power, really, if you think about it, Teams itself is stitches together all these different parts of Microsoft 365 that used to be separate. And they designed it so that other apps could join too. And this is a great thing for user experience because they don't have to leave Teams, and they can people can collaborate while they're using the apps. So that means that they don't have to. How many times have you copied and pasted? You get something in a chat or an email, and then you have to paste it into a web browser or some other app, and you're kind of like this human, network relay, sending things back and forth. By integrating your app directly into Teams, you can save your users from that and really make it easier for them to do their work. And we've noticed that this is really starting to take off. We're starting to see a factor of 10 usage of these apps over the last 2 years. So it's still kind of the early days, the ground floor, but there's a great opportunity here for this growing application platform. And really, you want to look for places where your app makes sense with Teams. I think just putting your app into the Teams UI is kind of a first step, but it doesn't really give the full impact unless you're really setting it up for people to share and discuss the content of your app, or to collaborate in meetings, to hand data off or information off to each other. And I'll show examples of these. And another thing that's nice about it is that these apps work in both desktop and mobile. So I don't think I'm set up for any mobile demos today, but this app does work in mobile, and a lot more and more people use their phones as their main way of interacting. This is very, very useful to be able to deliver it inside of Teams. So I won't go through all these points, but basically Teams apps make life easier for users by streamlining the work, allowing them to hand things to each other without having to go find another app and then go into that app and find the item that their colleague is talking about. And for developers, it's a big new market. We have 280 million active users every month with Teams, and it's also possible to sell your app in the Teams store. So Microsoft will actually bill the customer, send you 97% of the money. The fee is 3%, which is great compared with a lot of phone app models where you're paying 20 to 30%. So you really get, there's an opportunity here to build a business. So I think this AppCamp really is about taking any app and bringing it into Teams and kind of, just sort of helping you to understand kind of at the root how it's working. Where the easier technique that Kamal showed in track 1 does a lot of the details for you. In AppCamp, for better or worse, you're going to learn everything. So, and it turns out you can apply these techniques to any technology that can interact on the web, on the internet. It doesn't have to be the specific set that are delivered with, say, Teams Toolkit. So the way Teams works is that you've got these client programs. You're looking at one right now, I assume. There's a desktop client which works in Windows, Mac, and Linux. There's a web-based interface, and then there are mobile apps for iOS and Android. And then there's all these services underneath that are providing chat, calling, files, web pages, certainly Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, calendars. All these things are kind of underlying services, and Teams client stitches them all together into a single experience for the user. And the cool thing is your app can do the same, can be part of that. So, but your app doesn't actually run inside of Teams. It only appears to run inside of Teams because your application is built with standard web tools like web pages and web services. And what you end up doing is if you have a tab, that is a web page. If you have a bot, that's a web service. You're creating this file called manifest.json, which is what tells Teams, hey, there's a tab and there's the URL and there's a bot and it's over there, and brings everything together so that the user gets a seamless experience. Another thing to note is that your app can, excuse me, can also get to all those underlying services. So if you want to reach in and access a file for a user or look at their calendar, maybe you want to schedule something, you can do that too. And there's a REST API called the Microsoft Graph, which is another area that Kamal and I focus on, is kind of Teams and Graph. And you can utilize that from your application as well. So here are all the different capabilities that an app can have. You can have tabs, which you'll see all of these, I think, as we go through as I get into the demo. But there are tabs which are visual. There are bots which are conversational. You can extend the menus with message extensions. You can have pop-ups which are called dialogues or task modules. And really, a lot of these things are managed in the manifest. So as I mentioned, you would tell it there's a tab, the URL is this, and that goes into that manifest file. Some of the others are done in code. So my code is running. I decide I want to show an adaptive card. I would do that in my code, not in the manifest. And it's not important to try to remember all of this because the AppCamp labs are going to walk you through everything. So I'm just trying to kind of paint the landscape here of some of the types of things you can build. So, or even just sort of the tools that you can use to deliver your app in different ways. So how would you build one of these apps? Okay, you've got a web service, you've got a web page, you want to build this manifest. How do you really make it all come together? And the answer is, well, there's like 5 different ways to do it. The first way is Power Platform, and I don't know if you all have gotten involved with this, but it's not really the main topic today. But it is a low-code kind of rapid application development where you can draw on the screen to build apps. You can draw kind of flow diagrams for bots, and these are the URLs if you want to get those and try them out. And those apps can become Teams apps as well. It's built into these tools to publish to Teams. Another option, which is the one that track 1 is doing, is the Teams Toolkit. And I know Kamal is quite expert in this. She was one of the team that recently built a set of labs in Microsoft Learn on how to get started with Teams Toolkit. Teams Toolkit is an extension that you plug into Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio, and it will generate a starting project for you, and it will deploy everything into Teams and Azure and kind of handle all the little details for you. Eventually, you kind of have to understand what's going on, though, if you're going to deploy your app into production. Again, Teams Toolkit will make it much easier. They'll hand you all the deployment scripts and everything, but it's something where I think you kind of learn as you're going, and Teams Toolkit makes it generally easier, but it's a little bit less flexible because you kind of have to do things the way Teams Toolkit does them. So, for instance, your tabs are all going to be React apps because that's what Teams Toolkit uses. The third option, there's an older generator called Yo Teams, and this is a bit more mature because it's been around for like 3 years. It's supported by the community, and that's another fine option. And then there is the SharePoint Framework, which is really only going to do some of these things. I don't know if you're familiar with SharePoint. I'm probably not going to go into it too much here, but it is a nice way if you wanted to put a web part on a SharePoint page. So SharePoint has these composable web pages, kind of like any kind of content management system, and you could use those inside of Teams as well. But really today we're here to look at this fifth option, which is sort of take away all the tooling and everything and go right to the fundamental of it, because at its basis, Teams apps are based on web pages that are running with JavaScript. They're based on RESTful web services, and AppCamp allows you to understand exactly what's going on, and thus to build your app using any technology that's capable on the web. So the AppCamp labs are written in vanilla JavaScript. And the idea is that since everyone these days has to know JavaScript because it's the web browser standard, the idea is that any developer would be able to understand these labs and then apply it using whatever technology they prefer. If you want to build a React app, AppCamp will teach you how to make the calls to talk to Teams, and then it's up to you to build an Angular app or a Vue app or whatever technology, a Blazor or whatever app method that you want. So what you end up doing in AppCamp is extending. You're given in the first lab a working application that's just a web-based application. And then by the end, it's a full-featured Teams application with many of those extensions available to end users. And yet the original app still continues to work. And this seems to be, this is something based on feedback from our software vendor partners, is that they usually already have an app and they want to really kind of use that. So there's a question here. Do they have a GraphQL version? I don't know that they have a GraphQL version. Normally it's not. There is an SDK that supports different language bindings, but it's kind of, I think graphs were trendy when they named it, so everything had to be graph something, but it's not really GraphQL. Okay, so let's get into this a bit. Here is the Teams AppCamp page, and you can see, that there's, I should probably just bring it up on my screen. Hang on, let me switch to my demo machine. So if you go, you can follow along. You just go to aka.ms/ms app-camp. And here it is. And so there's, this is the web page, and there's a bunch of video briefings here, so you can get very in-depth by watching these videos. Kind of a welcome. Here's a business briefing that talks about the business opportunity, and if you want to monetize your app in Microsoft's store, there are experts on here who are discussing that, even a couple of case studies. One from India, actually, Decision Point. This was a really impressive app. They brought business intelligence into Teams, not into tabs, but into conversation, so that you can actually, sort of see and interact with business with this data, business intelligence data, as you're discussing it, which makes a ton of sense. If you think about the data on a screen, doesn't do anybody any good. It's after you bring it in and discuss it with your colleagues and figure out what to do about the data that you're going to have an impact, right? So that's a really nice. This one here was one of my favorite case studies. And then there's a technical briefing that this one Robbie and I get into, all of the details of how the Teams apps work, and then single sign-on and authentication, and then multi-tenant architecture, which is really about if you want to make your Teams app for one customer, you can install it into their Microsoft 365 environment, and that's one thing. But if you're going to sell your app at scale, you need it to work in everybody's tenant. You need to be able to set it up once and then sell it, and anytime a customer buys it, they're gonna connect to your app from any tenant. So we talk about that. And then there's another technical briefing all about monetization. And then there's a bunch of labs, and if you ever get stuck in a lab, there's actually a video for every single lab that walks you through how to do it. And then here's kind of the format of the labs, and let me show that here on the screen again to make it a little bit easier to see. So as I mentioned, you start off with a working application, and then there's two paths. You can either have your working application uses Azure Active Directory for login, or you can start with one that does not use Azure Active Directory for login, which means there's an extra step because you have to kind of match the users up between the app's native login and Azure AD. Because Teams uses Azure Active Directory as the login system, we really strongly encourage using single sign-on so that users don't have to sign on again to your app every time. And it's a much better user experience. It's also much more secure, really, because you don't have to worry about if somebody leaves a company, did you remember to take them out of some app? Here, you're going to manage their Azure Active Directory account and handle all the apps at one time. So once you get your app working, and this term core Teams app, I'll warn you, is just specific to these labs. It's not an official term. But once you finish these first 3 labs, I would recommend, if you're starting fresh, that you use this A path. It's simpler and you'll get going faster, and it's the way that I would build it if I was starting from scratch. You're going to have a single tab in Teams with your app in it, and then you can do these other labs in any order you want. And I'll probably have time to show all of them today, so I can show you kind of how they all work and what you end up with at the end of each one. So let's see, let's go into the demo a little bit, and I'll show you, first of all, here's my Visual Studio Code environment, and I'm running this server locally here. And then there's this thing called ngrok that is running, which is here, and it is providing a tunnel service from the internet into my app. And this is so that certain parts of Teams can kind of reach in and interact with your app. Specifically, if you think about how a normal web development works, right? You would have some kind of a local web server, right? And then you would point your web browser at that server, and everything would stay on your computer. If you wanted to call an API like the Microsoft Graph, you would just call it, and that would be fine. You just make the call outgoing from your firewall, and best practice would be to do that from the server side, and off you go. The challenge here is, and you would just debug locally, right? The challenge here is that Teams has another aspect to it, which is the bot service. So a lot of anything that is kind of real time that requires Teams to immediately take action on something, or maybe somebody clicked a menu in Teams and it needs to tell your app, like right now, like somebody clicked this menu, what do I show them? That's done using the Azure Bot service, and that Azure Bot service will not be able to make calls to your local server because presumably you're behind a firewall of some kind. And so that's really where this ngrok tunnel comes in, it gives a way to for those bot calls to get into your server. So again, the labs will walk you through all the details. But for now, here's my ngrok program. And if I just take this URL right here, which is the public URL that I'm exposing, and if I go to Katie's web browser, this is another user, test user, and plug that in, it's going to bring me to the app. And I'm going to get to log in with Azure AD, but there's no Teams yet. Now this particular app is based on some test data called the and I've got to set up multi-factor. They're bugging me to do that here. Oh no, I don't want to do that right now. I want to show my demo. I have 14 days. Ask later. There we go. That's what I wanted. There we go. Finally. All right. Now here I am, and you can see I've got a little navigation up at the top. I've got a welcome page. The Northwind data, you can tell how old it is if you look at these dates. So the Northwind database is kind of open source test data, and that's why we used it. So in the very first lab, you'll set up this app, and you'll also download the Northwind data. This goes all the way back to a product called Microsoft Access, which I guess is still around. Although you don't hear so much about it these days. It's a bit out of date, I would say. But it's anyway, this is here are all the orders for this particular user, and then I can go into one of the orders and see all the details of what they ordered. I can also go into products and see all the product categories, and maybe I decide I want to go into and see all the products, and everything's kind of cross-linked, right? Then I can say, okay, well, marmalade is good, I'll have some of that, and okay, well, here's the details of the product, and here are all the orders for that product, right? So everything's kind of cross-linked to everything, but it's really actually fairly simple app. So what you'll do in the first lab is just get this working. In the second lab, you'll extend it to Microsoft Teams. So let me show you a little bit of that. Here's the project, and let's see, forgive me, let me actually open this one up, because I'm gonna go into to just sort of maybe make it a little bit easier to see. I'm gonna go into one of so I've got all the solutions here, and I don't need to have all 8 copies of the project, so this will simplify it a bit. So here's the client, here's the manifest that's going to build that manifest file. Here's the database, which is just a bunch of JSON files that I downloaded using this DB download script as part of the first lab. And here's the server side code. Now, what you would do in lab 2 is build this manifest, and let's take a look at what that looks like. Here, it's just a JSON file, and you can see here's that same ngrok URL that I'm using in all the URLs, and there's a script that builds this for you. Here in this particular folder, I've done all the labs, so you're going to see everything turned on. But for instance, if I want to make a tab, here it would be, I can have 2 tabs here, one for orders, one for products. These are done in lab A2, right in the second lab. And you can see it's just put in that URL into there, and that this is for personal use. So once you build this manifest and upload it into Teams, what you get is something more like this. So I'm here in Teams, and I can go into the app, and it should come right up. Oh gosh, I see what I did. That's what happens if you don't start the app. So when I restarted Visual Studio Code, I forgot to restart the app server, which is just done by npm start. So let's try that again. Little tip, you don't have to refresh all of Teams. I like to debug these in the web browser, but there's a little baby refresh button right here just for your tab. And there we go. All right, so now you can see the orders. I'm a different user, but you can see all the orders and all that same data. But notice that the navigation that was on top has been replaced now with Teams tabs. So I'm actually in Teams. I could chat and discuss these things. I've got my orders, I've got my products, and I've even got a little about page that pulls information about my app out of the manifest, so users can see it. So, you know, this is what happens in Lab 2. Also notice that you don't need to log in. And in fact, you can't log out anymore because this is all connected to the Teams login. So it's not logging in via my app directly anymore. It's now using Teams. And basically Teams is saying, here's the user, and it actually reduces the amount of code that the app needs to do that. Then from there, the third lab, you'll actually build some styling and make it look more like Teams, which has already been applied here. And then we get into some of the advanced labs, which all kind of build from this as a starting point.
A quick question.
Yeah, question.
Oh, on the left-hand side, it's given Northwind orders, right? Below files. Can we set an icon there as well? Is there a possibility of doing that?
Yes, that's a great question. Yes, in fact, it's here. You would have done it in the lab, right?
Okay, this is just like our PWA, right? It's very similar.
Yeah, it's a very similar concept. So you're taking this manifest file and you're referencing actually the icons from here, right? And you're creating a zip package, and that's what gets uploaded. So you actually get to pick two icons, one large and one small, that will be used inside of Teams. So, you know, that's an easy thing. You can do the labs and then take away the icon that it was provided and put something else. It has to be 192 pixels square, and the small one has to be 32 pixels square. But yeah, that's normal. You're gonna get a certain amount of branding, which is here, and then also if you go into the App Store, this is where people would purchase an app. So here I've got a bunch of, you know, third-party apps from all different companies. Some of them are from Microsoft, but I could also look at this app, which I've installed in my enterprise app catalog, and it will kind of tell me. I didn't put in all the descriptions, but it will kind of tell me what the app is about, and I can decide if I really want to install it, that kind of thing. So there's definitely some control. So yes, it is a little bit like a PWA. I think there's definitely some good. That's a really good good comment. So now suppose I'm in my app. Let's go back in. And actually, suppose I'm in a team. So I don't know if you all use Teams in your day-to-day collaboration, but one of the things that's really important concept is the idea of a team inside of Teams. The terminology can be a little confusing. It's a team in Teams, but yes, a team is a group of people who are working together on something. So you might have a team for a class in university, you might have a team for a project, what have you, and then you're adding members to the team. So in this scenario, I have a team, and there's a channel, which is like a topic inside of the team for the beverages products. So if somebody wants me to check out, you know, please check the beverages, the app is already in Teams, right? So all I have to do is go to the three dots, that's one click. Then I have to go to Northwind orders, that's 2 clicks. Then I have to go to products, that's 3 clicks. Then I have to find the product category again, which it's right here at the top, but it's kind of annoying because I'm working on beverages all day long. Why do I have to go find it again? That's 4 clicks. And now 4 clicks later, I am able to see the beverage inventory. And now if I want to go back and comment on this with my team, I have to go back and well, I know that I can just click this button and it'll bring me there, but it's kind of a lot of navigating. I'm not sure I'm really getting any value out of the fact that this app is in Teams. So one of the labs is going to show you how to build a configurable tab. And the idea is if you're sharing it with other users, then they shouldn't all have to navigate in order to see what you wished for them to see. So what we'll do is add a tab right inside of the beverages channel. And I'll go into my app and I get something called a configuration page. So what's interesting is, again, just as the tab was an iframe, this is actually an iframe. So right here, this is my web page, whereas the top and the bottom are actually Microsoft Teams. So my web page is going to show a list of all the product categories. I can say I want a tab that brings users directly to the beverages products. And further, I want to post to the channel so that everyone knows about this. And there we go. Now, if I'm inside of this channel, all I have to do is click the tab and I'm immediately there. And not only that, but I can still continue to discuss. Isn't the chai order inventory low? Right, and we can actually have a whole conversation, and you can turn this on and off with this little chat bubble icon here, right? Anytime you're in a tab. So this becomes really valuable because now everyone in the team can immediately get there to your app and they can actually discuss the app in context. There's another lab that will show you how to bring this in on a meeting. So
there's another question quickly.
Yeah.
So is ngrok similar to nginx as a reverse proxy?
It is. It's a reverse proxy that is designed for, I guess the difference is Nginx is going to, if I sort of, let me see if I can draw. I'm just going to draw on this. Nginx kind of depends on a, oh, it's not working. Here we go. Nginx, you would have the internet, right? And you would have to have a direct access to Nginx. And then it would call your web server. The difference is, so if I had a firewall here, Nginx, I would have to open a hole in the firewall in order for the messages to get to Nginx, right? What's going on with ngrok is that I can have the internet, I can have an actual firewall, and this could be a corporate firewall. And let's imagine that you have no control over that firewall at all. So you're told you don't get to open a port. And then you're here on your development machine. You end up calling out to ngrok, and it actually creates a tunnel that brings messages in through the ngrok program to your local app. So it's essentially making an outgoing call to ngrok and then accepting incoming connections, internet connections through ngrok to your local computer. Thus, if your firewall is set up to allow outgoing connections, you can now, on one port on your local computer only, accept an incoming connection. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's a two-way proxy of sorts.
It's a two-way proxy, and it doesn't require you to, it works behind a firewall or a NAT, a network address translation, whereas a strict, just a simple reverse proxy like Nginx, not that it's simple, you can obviously do a million things with it. I would use Nginx in production, right? But for development purposes, ngrok is a nice tool because developer can run it on his or her own computer, and the messages will flow past the firewall. For this reason, You'll also find that some customers will prohibit the use of Nginx, or sorry, of ngrok on their network. So we've had situations where people had to use a guest network or find some other way to do it. There's a couple of videos in AppCamp that get into the details on this. I'll find one, but anyway, that is, I think it's here, that it explains ngrok in a bit more detail. Here, do you need ngrok? You don't really need it, but you need to be able to accept connections from the bot service on the internet somehow. So you could open a port if you have permission to do that. So hopefully that helps. There's some other questions, it looks like. Oh yeah, so yep, Teams, okay, yes, you're using it some. And so thank you for that. Okay, so anyway, that's the configurable tabs lab. Let's try the meeting app. So I've got an app here. Sorry, I have a meeting, not an app. I'm gonna come in and chat with the participants, and I'm gonna bring in a new tab, as I did before, and bring in the Northwind orders and configure this. Let's pick, let's go with produce this time. Yeah, so we'll make sure we get our veggies, right? And now here it is inside of the meeting. When people join the meeting, and this is fun, I'm joining a meeting inside of a meeting. You can see there's the little icon here. Forgive me, I have the app registered a couple of times with different icons, so I get confused. But and then the app shows up over here on the side. So maybe now we're discussing this data inside of, and probably we should have got rid of this logout button, but because it doesn't even do anything. So, and then there's also a share to stage feature here that I'm not finding. Oh wait, here it is. That will make it run kind of full screen during the meeting. So this is really fun. If we have time at the end, I don't think we're gonna. Robbie and I built another app that actually also shows how to synchronize the backend data between, or actually between, not even going all the way to the back end, between different meeting apps, so that you can kind of provide a shared user experience. Imagine that users were actually manipulating this data and in real time seeing the changes. So that's kind of a nice scenario. So some other labs. Another one that you can do is something called a message extension. So let me come in here and get out of this meeting. Go away. And I'm going to talk to Katie, and who is a fake user. I'm sure she would be a very nice person if she was an actual person. And I'm going to say, could you please check the inventory of, and I could type the name of a product. And then what would she have to do? She'd have to go into some app, maybe this app, and look up where's the product stored in the warehouse and what's the inventory in the product database, and then maybe go count them, update the database, and come back. It's kind of a lot of steps. I'd like to save her having to go look up the product again, because I know what product I want. So I can use a message extension. So these are all message extensions. A lot of them are built into Microsoft Teams, but you can add your own. So I'm going to go into Northwind one, and it will allow me to just start searching the products. And yeah, here it is, chai, right? And I bring this in, and this is pretty cool. This creates something called an adaptive card. So if you want to learn more about those, you can go to adaptivecards.io and learn all about them. I like starting with the samples, and you can just see all these different examples of like a weather report, or I'm ordering some food online. Maybe I've got an agenda. meeting agenda. These are all things that you can put into these little cards. And what's nice is they're just JSON structures. So even if the user is not currently in your app, maybe your app is not even available at that moment, the card still works because it's just this little JSON structure. So now I've sent Katie this card with some inventory information on it, and she can actually take action, and she can say, oh yeah, no, there's actually 73 of them in stock, and she can update that from the card. So now she could be on her phone and do that and not have to go looking up the product over and over again in order to help me out here with the inventory check, just to show that it worked. We'll come in and actually look at that product, and sure enough, there it got updated. So that's another lab that you can do. Another one is to show how dialogues work. So if I'm these are especially useful in conversation. Here we're in a tab, but it just allows you to make a pop-up window that you could put any web page in. Again, if I kind of look at this, this is an iframe right here. And the dialogue is just, it looks like one thing, but Teams is just launching something that looks like a dialog box and has an iframe in it that points to my app code. So here I can say, this order is late, maybe, right? And save a little bit of information about this order, and it'll get dropped here. Another cool lab is the deep linking lab. You may not realize, but you can make a link to almost anything in Teams. If I want to chat with Kamal, I can make a link, a deep link that says one click, and even if I'm not in Teams, it brings up Teams, opens up the chat feature, and finds Kamal and brings her into it with one click. And that's what we're going to do here, except we're going to go even further. We're going to go into our app and go in and pass deep link information into our app. And so you'll learn how to do that. So here I can copy the deep link, and let me just open a fresh tab, paste this in. Notice that it goes into Teams. It's actually going to go into Teams, and no, I don't want you to launch. I could have actually had it launch the rich client, but whatever. It's going to go into Teams. If I was in a particular Teams channel, it'll go into the channel, and then it'll go into my app, and it'll pass the order number into my app, and my app will be smart enough to say, oh, this is a deep link. I'm going to bring the person right to this information. So it's kind of a bare bones demo, but it's super powerful because, like, I could send someone an email or some other kind of a notification. Maybe I send them a chat message on their phone, and they tap it, and it doesn't just bring me to the app. It brings me to the tab inside of Teams, where they could also chat about the tab or do other things. So that's the deep linking. And then sort of the last lab to sort of show here is the monetization lab. And I'll just quickly show you what we've done is we've given a mock-up of our catalog. So there's this thing called AppSource. And here I've purchased a subscription to my app. I'm going to cancel it right now. And I'll go back to the app and refresh it. And sorry, you need a license. You got to pay up, buddy. So so what I can do is in this lab, you'll learn how to build this. I'm going to go in and purchase the app. You can either purchase a site license, so everybody in this customer can use the app, or you can choose what's called a seat-based plan. Now, which means I'm allowing for 5 users. Note that this isn't really what it looks like. This is just mocked up. We're sort of simulating the App Store here, because Microsoft Teams actually has an App Store where you would put in your credit card number or something, right? But we're just simulating it here, and then once you make the purchase, it's going to send you to what's called the landing page in the app. And that is where the app now gets to sort of do any provisioning that it needs for a new customer, ask the customer any questions like, where are you going to use this thing? Oh, I'm going to use it in India. Okay. And then I'll go ahead and set that up. And then I can come in and set up I could either add users one at a time, or there's a license setting in here. Again, this is a sample because you could code this any way you want. The business rules here are that they're going to allow something called first come, first served, which means when somebody wants to use the app, if they don't have a license, it just gives them a license. So with that working, let me come back here, refresh. Okay, it works again. And actually, if I come back to the license page and refresh, you'll see there I am, and I was given a license. So this shows you how to build those kind of licensing parts of the app. And there's some videos that will help you with the kind of business part. You have to sign up in a Microsoft website called Partner Center, and establish a business relationship with Microsoft so that they can send you money, basically, which is kind of a nice thing. So those are the labs. I think I got them all. Let me see if I forgot any, and we're running towards the end of our time. So so maybe that's good timing. And yeah, so here we are. I'm back in my deck. So to get started with this, and this is the same first step as the Teams Toolkit or any of these methods, the first thing you want to do is get a free Microsoft 365 tenant. And these are for development use only, but you get 25 user accounts, so you can set up a bunch of different test users if you want to. And you get to be the full admin. So if you're using Teams through your school or through your job, you don't need to, you probably wouldn't be an administrator, right? And I would never want you to test something like a new app for the first time inside of a production environment. So don't do that. Get your own free one. Abjith, is there something special that they should be doing? What's the VIT?
So VIT is our university, so I usually recommend them to use that ID.
Oh, okay. Good suggestion. Yeah, because then you get this tenant where you're the admin. You can do everything you want. You can't break anything. So if you want to try something, go ahead and try it. And the worst thing you'll do is break your own little development world, but you're not going to affect other users, that kind of thing. It's a really good deal. And as long as the membership lasts, I was thinking it was 90 days, it might be 120 days, and then it automatically renews as long as you're developing stuff. So there's telemetry in there, which it will shut you down if you try to actually have 25 people doing full business on it, but on the other hand, if you deploy an app every few months, it's going to auto renew, and you'll be able to use it indefinitely. That's important for me because I don't want to set everything up and then suddenly my trial basis has expired. So it's much better than an ordinary trial. You also need Node.js, which allows you to run JavaScript on the server on your desktop where you're doing the labs, a code editor, and the ngRock. And then I've already done the demos. I often do that and get ahead of myself. And sort of some ideas for next steps. So this first URL is where everything is. It's aka.ms/app-camp. And then if you're building an actual app for the store, you can, the second link is there for support. You fill in a form and give them some information, and the team that's supporting this is specifically looking to get apps in the store. So I think if you're testing and playing around, you can ask me or Kamal or something. We can try to help you, but this support is for if you're actually building something for the store. Microsoft wants to help more apps get into the store. So again, this is actually a potential business at some point. And then we also have some live streams that we've done. You can there's the link for those, and our YouTube channel. So let me see if there's more questions here. There's an authball. Oh, okay. That's good to know that there are those things. And yeah, there's the URL. So I guess we're at time, but I can stay a bit if you can. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer, or at least try to.
Abhijit, they can unmute themselves, or you'll have
Yeah,
to do it.
they're allowed to unmute. They have access to
Okay,
that. I didn't
yeah.
restrict it.
So folks, if you have any questions, you can ask Bob.
Guys, come
or
on.
you
We have a team here. We are going to build the CMS. I'm pretty sure you must have questions.
Yeah, or you can just ping on the chat or something.
So hello, sir. So yeah, I'm
Hello.
Darun. Yeah, so I have a doubt. So a general doubt. So if I want to like play with Microsoft Toolkit,
Mm-hmm.
and if I want to, so only so can I only play with it in the JS like JavaScript? Can I use the other languages such as Python or something like that? Was it?
Well, for Teams Toolkit, so that's the code generator that will generate the whole app for you. That if you do that, if you use that inside of Visual Studio Code, then you have choice of JavaScript or TypeScript. If you use it inside of Visual Studio itself, then you're going to have an ASP.NET, a C# backend. But the idea of AppCamp is that, yes, you could absolutely use Python for your backend. There's no reason you couldn't. AppCamp doesn't actually use Python. So the idea is to show you how to use how to make the REST calls, how to use the SDK, and then you can adapt this. You know, you're smart. You can take these concepts of how do I call a web service, and well, you call the same web service in Python, and it's going to work the same. So that's why AppCamp is kind of designed the way it is that we have partners who are building in all different languages, and we didn't.
Yeah.
Unlike in the toolkit where it sort of says here's your app and that's it. Here we're saying no, it's any technology could do this, and we're going to teach you the fundamentals. So you could use Python, but it's on you to sort of take one of the JavaScript examples or the AppCamp labs and sort of translate it into Python. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I got it. Yeah, thank you very much.
I have a trivia question. I just found this out and it amused me, so I'm gonna ask everyone. So you probably know that if you have many words and you're putting them into a variable name or something, that you can use camel case or Pascal case. But what is the name of this one if you put dashes? I know this is a little off topic, but it amused me.
Can you repeat the question in just a bit? I don't understand the hyphenated part.
Yeah, it's sorry, I shouldn't be taking your time with this. It's silly, but
Is it
so
kebab
if
case
you
by any chance?
if you have a bunch of words and you mush them together and you put capital at the top, it's called camel case. And I believe if you start with lowercase, then that's called Pascal case. But if you put dashes between, like if you're defining a custom, yes, Aditya, big prize for Aditya. It's called kebab case. I thought that was hilarious because it's as if a skewer
I guess.
Is that
was
even
going
legal? I never knew this was legal
through
because
your words.
Hmm.
I just laughed out loud when I heard that yesterday, so I had to share it.
Yeah, indeed, the skewer we use.
it's unbelievable.
Hmm.
Who came up with that?
That's a good. Aditya Sai. You knew it,
Brilliant.
or it was just a guess, Aditya?
Literally saw a dude.
I probably heard
I
it
think
somewhere,
they were having
but
some
it was a
traffic
guess.
issue. It's slightly bumped in.
There's too much
Okay.
disturbance on his background due to his hostel because he shares.
No
rooms
worries,
with
no
some
worries.
girls.
Totally get it. It's an off time, so totally understandable. Okay, so
No,
if we have
anyway.
any questions, any more questions, guys? Okay. If not, in the meantime, I'll just brief up about this bootcamp, which is the track 2 exclusively for AppCamp. So this is going to be a 6 weeks bootcamp where it'll be like 4 weeks of self-study. Self-study is like completely on your own. You would have a channel created, you would have MVPs and student ambassador supporting you throughout your learning process. And whatever link Bob has been sharing and I've been sharing on the chat, that is what you will be going through. And if you have any questions or any post queries, discussions, you can post it on channel and you would have someone helping you throughout this process. And after that, after the self-study is over, you would have 2 weeks to work on a capstone project, because whatever you've learned, you need to understand, right? What? So the week can be kind of variable one. If you finish something in 2 weeks, you can take 4 weeks for your capstone project to complete. So there is no restrictions on the number of weeks. It's totally flexible. Take your own time. So you need to have experience, or if you already have a web application, or if you think that I'm interested in this, I have experience, but I don't have an application or something, Bob or the team can help you with some few project ideas, or you can come up with your own project ideas as well. So you want to work in individual group, totally up to you. Or Abhijit, I think you already have a project and you have a plan in doing one. So would you like to brief about it very quickly?
Oops, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, yes.
The idea is that we need a registry application where we have members of our club alone, and we need to add some sort of a notification system on top of it, integrate calendars, and all sorts of other ideas are going on. There'll also be some linking to GitHub, if I'm not wrong, but I'm not sure how feasible that is. So yeah, that's roughly it. We'll put out the list of features soon. We'll send you a copy of it if it's possible. And yeah, that's about it.
So, another thought here is, let me paste this in. There is a, we actually maintain a set of community samples. So these are Teams app samples from the community. If you come up with a really good example, you can actually contribute to this, do a pull request, and we will, you'll get a Credly badge. You'll get like a badge that you can post. And maybe we'll bring you into one of our community calls and you can present to the Microsoft 365 developer community. There's also some requests. If you go into the issues list in this repo, you'll see that our colleague Wajid has actually posted several new sample ideas for samples that he wishes someone would write. So if you're looking for an idea, maybe there's something there that would be interesting. They're fairly generic examples, like an approval scenario and all these different ways of doing an approval, or a daily bot reminder. And they're looking for specific languages because they're trying to kind of round out the samples that are available for everyone. So just an idea, but here's the samples that we have, and you can see there's a bunch of them already. And if you come up with something and you'd like to share it, we would love to have more samples.
All right, guys. So I think you know the place where to look for ideas, or even pick one if you don't have and you think you can work on it. So that's the GitHub link. And so post this call, I think Abhijit will kind of communicate with you, talk about the project, or if you already have one, you can be a part of the WhatsApp group or the Teams channel, which I'll be creating very soon. And Bob and other MVPs and the student ambassadors will be a part of it. So start working on the not the learn path, I would say the AppCamp learn path module. And then you can start working on the project. So Bob will be always kind of glancing through the team. If he finds something interesting and he thinks you need help or something, he might come once in a while and help you guys. And yeah, but we have dedicated team to help you with this project. So yeah, any other questions related to the bootcamp?
Yeah, a lot of members were asking me if there's a
Mhm.
Teams channel for track 2. So I think you just addressed that.
Yes, I'll be creating one. So based on the number of interest and how you want to work in groups or individual, or is this entire team and entire group or something like that. So based on it, we'll create a Teams channel and we'll have all of further communications there.
Yep,
Any other
that's nice.
questions?
I'll stop the recording if that's fine.
Yeah, yeah.